To order for the Township of Puslinch on May 20th, 2020. And I will start with roll call. Councillor Goyda. Yeah, you might be muted.
Present.
There we go. Councillor Spillis.
Present.
Councillor Bailey. I see you. Are you there still? Nope. Councillor Bailey.
Present.
There we go. Councillor Balmer.
Present.
Okay, so we have two additional items added to the agenda. I'll ask Mr. CAO to give us a quick update on those, please.
Sure. Under reports under administration, we have one regarding broadband internet, a proposal to do some work for us to secure some funding. I'll go through that. And then we also, under closed session, we have an additional item dealing with some recruitment issues.
Okay, thank you. We'll now ask for any disclosure of pecuniary interests.
Yes. I am declaring a pecuniary interest for item number 7.4 and 9.4B. The items are the township comments to the amendment to Ontario Regulation 244-97 and the Dufferin aggregate holding removal. And the nature of the pecuniary interest is that a family member operates an aggregate in the township, and any comment or influence could be perceived as a pecuniary interest.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so on to the next items. We have the adoption and receipt of the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I get Ms. Whitefox to read that resolution, please?
That the minutes of the following meeting be adopted as written and distributed. A, May 6, 2020 electronic participation council meeting.
Okay, can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, seconder. Oh, Councillor Balmer's, you'll okay with there being the seconder? All right, all in favor. Councillor Spillis?
Aye.
Councillor Bailey? You didn't unmute.
In favor.
Okay, Councillor Balmer
Favor.
and Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
Okay, thank you. Any business arising out of the previous minutes? See none. Matthew, I assume you have none. I don't have your video. Okay, public meetings, none. Communications. Do we have Angela and Nicole on the line, Ms. Whitefox?
Yes, I'm just gonna bring her over, and then I think she has her presentation ready to go through a screen share.
Okay, perfect. Computer is not cooperating.
I think, Angela, I think you might still be muted.
Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Tracy, are you also on the call? I will get started. Courtney, do you know if Tracy joined us?
If you want to just pop out of the screen share for just a moment there, Angela, I'll just see if I can bring her over as well. Okay, Angela, you're good to go back to your presentation mode if you'd like. I brought Tracy over. She just needs to unmute herself and then we're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Here, thank you. So can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure whether my there. Oh, there I am. Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank the council for inviting us here this afternoon to your virtual meeting. I'm Tracy Smith, and I'm a partner at BDO. I've taken on the engagement partner role with the retirement of Sally Slumsky. So I've been working with municipalities for over 30 years at BDO, and I'm currently the engagement partner for 16 municipalities in Grey Bruce, Dufferin, and Simcoe County. So I do have a fair amount of municipal experience. Angela Nickel is also attending the meeting, and she's the senior manager working closely with Mary in your finance department. So Angela is going to present a short, high-level overview of portions of the draft financial statements. The statements are in draft, and they need to be approved by council before they can be released in final. A full, complete copy of those financial statements are, I believe, included in your council package. Just a reminder that management is responsible for preparing these financial statements. It's our responsibility as your auditor to give an opinion on these financial statements prepared by management. Our opinion is included in those draft financial statements, and it is an audit opinion, and that's the highest level of assurance that we can provide as public accountants. We have obtained sufficient and appropriate audit evidence to provide an unqualified opinion. So in our opinion, the financial statements that you have in your package are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards, which basically means we have found no issues during the audit, and that we give a clean opinion. So at this time, I'd like to thank Mary and her finance team for all their assistance during the audit, especially in these difficult times with COVID-19 and everyone working from home. It does get to be a little challenge trying to get information back and forth, but I would like to thank Mary and her team. They were fabulous to work with. So I'll turn it over to Angela now. If you have any questions, I believe Angela's going to pause kind of after each statement to see if there is any questions, and we can also answer questions at the end of the presentation. So Angela will go into the presentation now.
I would just continue with the presentation, and you can take questions from council at the very end.
Okay, thank you.
So just a outline of what we're going to cover today. So we'll go through a review of the significant financial statement elements, a few notes, and then Tracy will cover the final report to council. So the statement of financial position is a snapshot of the municipality at December 31st, 2019. This statement highlights your cash resources, your net financial assets, any non-financial assets the municipality holds, and then finally the accumulated surplus at the end of the year. Just a few highlights about the statement of financial position. There is an increase in cash due to an increase in reserves and obligatory reserve funds, as well as an increase in your deferred revenue, and that is due to unspent development charges, gas tax funding, and recreational land. This leads to your accumulated surplus at the very bottom of the $24.3 million. Your statement of operations and accumulated surplus, it reports the revenue and expenses of the municipality for the 2019 calendar year. The revenue and expenses are reported under public sector accounting standards, which is very different from the cash-based budget that you normally would use. So just a little caution on this statement. A few highlights. So you received a modernization funding of about $569,000 during the year, which was transferred into a reserve for future use. There was an increase in your provincial aggregate levy of about $220,000 compared to the prior year, as well as an increase in your investment income, and that's the result. You'll see an increase in your other revenue compared to the prior year. In addition, your expenses have increased about $75,000 from the prior year. But this is still about $75,000 less than what you budgeted for this year, so which is positive. This resulted in an annual surplus of $1.2 million. And again, just cautioning that this is very different from the operating surplus due to the differences between the treatment of items under public sector accounting standards. So this just kind of highlights the different sources of revenue. So you'll see that taxation makes up the significant portion of your municipality's revenue for 2019. And then both grants and other income make up about 20% of the rest of the income. So two different ways to look at expenses. The top chart breaks it down into departments. So you'll see there that general government and transportation makes up about 27% of your expenses for 2019. And the bottom chart breaks it down by the functional areas. So you'll see there that salaries make up almost nearly half of the municipality's expenses, with materials and supplies and contracted servicing rounding out the top three. So this statement takes your annual surplus that you would have saw on the statement of operations and removes any activities related to the non-financial assets. So this is a good statement to see your changes in your capital assets for the year. So this year you invested about $400,000 in capital assets. So leaving you with a net increase in your net financial assets of about $871,000 and leaving you with net financial assets of $5.1 million at the end of the year. So your statement of cash flows breaks down your activities between operating, finance, and capital transactions. It helps show the sources and uses of your cash during the year. So just very high level, you received cash from your operations of about $3,490,000. And of that cash, you used about $1.9 million to fund capital assets during the year. This led to an increase in cash of about $1.5 million and leaving you with cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year of $7.3 million. So this is your accumulated surplus note. It helps break down that large accumulated surplus balance that you would have found on the statement of financial position into kind of further details. Again, you can see that the largest piece of that accumulated surplus is the amount that you've invested in tangible capital assets of about $19 million. In addition, you have a general surplus of $542,000 at the end of the year and reserve balance of about $4.7 million. So this breaks down kind of your reserve note into just a chart with a little different headings than the chart that you would have seen in the last slide. It shows you that you have reserves totaling about $4.7 million in the current year. And one large change to note from the prior year is the adoption of your asset management reserve. And this was the consolidation of a bunch of your other capital purpose reserves that were on hand at the end of last year. Just to note, so your net transfers to reserves for this year were about $325,000. On top of that is about $421,000, which is your transfer of your prior year surplus into reserves. So in total, you had about $746,000 that you transferred into reserves for the year. So this is your obligatory reserve fund. So there was a kind of large increase from this year compared to the prior year, and that's due to a kind of additional development charges, gas tax funding, and cash in lieu of parkland that you received during the year that remained unspent. So that results in this large increase. Is there any questions on any of the charts before I hand it over to Tracy? Okay, so Tracy, do you want to take it away with the final report?
Yes, thanks, Angela. So as your auditor, we're required to communicate with those charged with governance, which is you, the council. The full report with all the required communications is included in your package. The report contains many standard required items that appear every year. So the report will look similar to the prior year. Just going through a summary of that report, as discussed, the financial statements are draft until they're approved by council. Once we obtain approval, then we need to get a signed representation letter from council dated on that approval date and subsequent event testing up until that to the approval date. In terms of materiality, amounts are material if they could affect the decisions of users relying on the financial statements. So as your auditor, we provide reasonable assurance on the financial statements, but not absolute assurance because we can't audit 100% of the transactions. Therefore, we use the materiality to help us focus the audit and to determine amounts to be help us to determine the amounts to be tested using the statistical sampling. In terms of our audit findings, our audit strategy was communicated in our planning letter to you. There were no changes to the plan procedures and no issues were identified in our testing. So, and no additional risks arose during the performance of the audit. Internal controls, as your auditor, we're required to report to you in writing if we find anything, any weaknesses in your internal controls. We did not find any weaknesses in the internal controls that we tested during the audit. The next page has the management representation letter that we'll have to obtain to release the finals, and that's in Appendix C of the report. We do confirm annually that we are independent, so we confirm that we're independent. Unadjusted differences. So if there's any unadjusted differences, we're required to report to you those to you in writing. Those have been attached in Appendix D. The amounts are not material, therefore we can issue a clean opinion that these financial statements are not materially misstated. In terms of fraud discussion, as your auditor, we are required to highlight this on an annual basis, that the prevention and detection of fraud is a shared responsibility between the auditors, management, and council. So if you do have any issues that you would like to discuss, I can be contacted directly. And that concludes our presentation. I'd like to thank the council again for allowing us to be the auditors of the township. And we'd be happy to take any questions if you have any further questions.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Great work. I'm going to start with Councillor Spillis. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions of the auditor, but I'd like to thank staff for keeping us on the straight and narrow with respect to financial matters, so we did get a clean audit.
Okay. Councillor Bailey? Did we lose Councillor Bailey? I don't see her on my screen. Oh, there she is. Yeah, unmute. Yeah, there you go.
There, sorry. I as well don't have any questions and would echo what Councillor just said toward the staff. Good job.
Okay. Councillor Bulmer?
Yes, thank you very much. No questions, but considering that we had 3 CAOs for 2019 and a lot of changes internally, I think it is a testament to Mary and her steady hand on the tiller that things turned out as well as they did. And so thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Goyda?
I don't have any questions, but I would just like to echo the rest of council and thank staff, and especially Mary and the accounting staff. I think it's a real, we're very fortunate to have such a strong accounting staff and keeping us on the straight and narrow. And it's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Excellent. Okay, well, I agree, I echo those statements as well. Great job, Mary. Great job, everyone. Challenging year last year with staff turnover and, positions bouncing around and being changed. So I'm glad to see that we're in good shape. So I'll ask Ms. White Fox to read out the resolution, please. Thank you, Tracy and Angela, for your presentation.
Thank you.
The council receives a presentation by Angela Nicol and Tracy Smith of BDO Canada LLP regarding the 2019 Township of Plisslinch financial statements, and that council approves the following documents from BDO Canada LLP. A, final report to members of council dated May 20th, 2020, and B, financial statement for the year ended December 31st, 2019.
I get a mover for that, please. Councillor Spoulos, second by Councillor Goida. And all in favor, Councillor Spoulos,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
In favor?
Councillor Balmer,
In favor?
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we're going to move on to the County of Wellington Additional Residential Units Official Plan Amendment. Do we have Jameson or Megan to join us, Ms. White Fox?
We have Jameson, and I'm just going to move him over to a panelist now. And I think he also has a presentation to do a screen share with everyone as well.
Hello.
Jameson, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good. I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
You have a barber.
Well, it's me.
Ah, nice.
Don't look too hard.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I guess if I can take it away, I'll try to show my screen here. Let me just. Share. There we go. Can everyone see that presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I can, yep.
I'll just start that. Let's see. Are we still good?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so council may recall, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council for having me. This is really just a follow-up to the last council discussion we had around the official plan amendment. The committee or the council may recall that they received a committee report from the county on official plan amendment 112 or additional residential units. And part of that presentation was that council wanted to get a little bit more information on the amendment itself and just kind of clarify some of council's questions. So that's what this presentation is. It's just to kind of follow up on that previous discussion and provide a little bit more information. So again, for some background, the Planning Act had previously contained provisions in section 16.3, which related to second units. And so you may be familiar with that. We have policies in our plan currently which provide for second units to be established in single detached, semi-detached, and row house dwellings. And so essentially, Bill 108 came along and amended those provisions of the Planning Act to provide for additional residential units, or now 3 units that can be permitted into a property with a single detached, semi-detached, or row house dwelling. And so the amendment is essentially implementing that legislative change, and that change came into effect in September of last year. So we're really just moving forward with implementing the change with this official plan amendment. So here is really just a comparison of the 2 pieces of legislation as they existed, one pre-Bill 108, and then after Bill 108 came through. And really the highlighted red areas are the areas of change. And really what it is the stripping away of the restrictive language that would allow for either one unit or a second unit. And now it's just being more permissive and allowing for one in the primary dwelling and a unit as in an ancillary building. So it's more of an and as opposed to an or kind of language breakdown. So really what's changing in the official plan is it's not a huge sweeping change. It's really just more of an enabling change to align with the policy direction of the Planning Act. But I guess the particulars include terminology change related to second unit. That language will be revised to additional residential units. 3 units will be permitted as opposed to a total of 2. And we're broadening where we're allowing units in ancillary buildings. So currently we allowed them to be in ancillary buildings associated with single detached dwellings. And what we're doing now is we're opening up the full suite of permissions to include semi-detached as well as row house dwellings. We had done that change. We had limited the scope previously because at the time we didn't feel that there was maybe the demand for that type of unit with those types of dwellings. But since then we've done some work in terms of an attainable housing strategy, and the climate since when we implemented the second unit policies has changed related to housing. So we've decided to open up the full gamut of permissions and leave that to the townships to kind of sort out in terms of restricting where they want those units to go through their zoning regulations. So we've been from a top-down perspective, we've allowed the most permissions that we can in relation to the legislation. But again, we're still reviewing we're still in the process of the official plan amendment, and we're receiving feedback. So there may be additional changes that come about as a result of the consultation. So here I just thought I'd show really how these units will take shape in our communities, and just showing how an additional residential unit may exist in a dwelling, in the primary dwelling. There's a variety of configurations that could occur, not only within the dwelling, but also as an addition to the dwelling. This is really showing how it could take form in terms of an ancillary building, a unit in an ancillary building. And there's a couple options in terms of a unit attached to a garage or on top of a garage, or it could take shape as a standalone structure. So there's some flexibility there. And really just to emphasize, it's going from this or this to allowing this and this, provided you meet all the criteria associated with the official plan and then the zoning regulations. Really in terms of an impact to the municipality, you'll be required to update your zoning regulations to implement this new framework. That could take shape through a housekeeping amendment or a standalone amendment. The really important thing is that these regulations that implement Section 16.3 of the Planning Act are not appealable. So that's true for the official plan policies right down to the zoning regulations, that they won't be able to be appealed. So I took some time to watch the council presentation at your last council meeting to kind of go through and pick up some of the questions that were asked, and I'll try to just make my way through that, and then I'd be happy to address any further questions. So one of the questions raised was what was meant by item H under policy 4461, and that really related to the section is stated there, whether a garden suite and an additional residential unit will be permitted on the same lot. So that provision is intended to give municipalities flexibility in considering whether they would like to permit garden suites and additional residential units on the same lot. So under the Planning Act, both those units are addressed separately. So an additional residential unit and the policies associated with it do not limit the garden suite or vice versa. So it becomes necessary should a municipality wished to limit where those units can kind of exist together, to explicitly state that, just because of the legislative differences which permit them. So that's why we've what we mean by that provision. What was the other question? What is the rationale for limiting the number of additional residential units in ancillary buildings to only to one only? Which it's a good question, and so really we're reading the legislation, and in this particular case, it's quite clear in terms of how additional units are to take shape across the landscape. And when they speak of additional residential units in ancillary buildings, they're clear in state one. So our official plan amendment has been worded in a way to give way to that, to the legislation. We really don't have any really further clarification on why you can't have two. We can certainly, make guesses as to why that is. But as for clarification from the province as why they took that approach, we don't really have that at this time. We've put feelers out to them to try to get some information back. So we'll be again accepting and working through this amendment and refining it as we get that information. Another question that I picked up was, does the phrase "one additional residential unit" at the start of section 4462 limit the objectives of the overall policy to permit more units? So 4462 is particularly related to additional residential units in ancillary buildings. And as I noted just previously, that the legislation only allows for one unit in an ancillary building. And so that terminology and that phraseology is only applicable to additional residential units in ancillary buildings. And so in that context, it is appropriate, and it doesn't limit the overall impact of the policy, which when read together would give permissions the full width of what is permitted under the Planning Act. So Section 446, when read in its entirety, would implement the full suite of additional residential unit permissions. So we don't have to worry about limiting the impact of the legislation through that one particular clause there. And then the last question that I was able to pick up was that there does not appear to be any mention of the location or number of entrances or doorways to additional residential units. Is that considered in the policies? So under section 4461, there's a list of criteria there that municipalities may consider when they are developing zoning regulations. And one of them is item D, and it states that any exterior alterations to the main residence necessary to accommodate the additional residential unit are made in the side or rear yard. So the intent of that clause was to provide flexibility for municipalities to guide the alterations made to physical structures to accommodate additional residential units. And so that could certainly a zoning regulation could be developed from that would regulate where the doors or entrances of additional residential units could potentially be located. So there is that potential in the legislation or in the official plan to allow municipalities to regulate the location of those doors. So that was the extent of the questions that I was able to pick up from the last council meeting, but I'm happy to address any other.
Okay, thank you, Jameson. So I just have a couple of questions. I'm just going to go first. The intent of this is not to allow triplexes, right? So essentially 3 units in the primary residence, that's not going to be permitted.
Right, and so again, the legislation is is clear in terms of where it permits the additional residential units. It says one in the primary dwelling and one in the ancillary building. So yeah, that certainly is certainly a concern if you're starting to have multiple residential units within the primary dwelling in terms of zoning and issues that way.
Sure. And then you mentioned the garden suites could be kind of considered on their own. So is there potential to have primary residence with a secondary unit, detached garage with an auxiliary unit, and then a garden suite? So you end up with 4 units on a property if the private services could support it?
That's right, and I would think that would be a fairly large septic system to be able to accommodate all of that. But hypothetically, yes, that's what that's what could happen.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Spillis.
Yeah, just in reference to the mayor's last question, but I thought you said that this would be up to the local municipality to enact the necessary bylaws to allow that to happen.
So I may have missed the first part of your question there, but certainly once the official plan amendment is adopted by county council, zoning bylaws for our local municipalities will need to be updated to implement the zoning, or to implement the necessary framework that would allow for additional residential units. And so the zoning regulations will be quite detailed, I would suspect, in terms of how these units are going to be developed in West Lynch or where have you. And really, the official plan provides flexibility for municipalities to develop the regulations that are adaptable to their unique circumstances.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bailey.
There we go. No, I don't have a specific question, but Jameson, I guess I just wondered if there's any issues that maybe have flagged you while you were looking through this amendment.
Well, thank you for the question. Certainly, something that is top of my mind when we're thinking about multiple units on a property is how is that going to be effectively serviced and accommodated, particularly in our rural areas or our unserviced settlement areas. And I think we're gonna have to spend some time, I think at the later stages of this, in particular in the zoning development, thinking about that question and how we can effectively utilize these new flexibilities, but in a way that makes sense and we're not overstraining, private systems. So that's something that's been in my mind, and it's something that we'll have to be cognizant of.
Councillor Balmer.
Thank you. Thank you, Jameson. I guess my question is more about next steps. And as we look at developing the zoning bylaw to support this or to implement these policies, once we do the zoning bylaw, does it automatically legalize all of the existing secondary units or that perhaps were built and are occupied, but not through a appropriate process? Do they automatically they may become, I guess my question is 2 parts. One, do they automatically become legal under the process, or do we build that into the bylaw? Do we build a legalization process into the bylaw, or does it just become a building department issue to make sure that they're built appropriate?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and maybe I'll take that away and I can think about that a little bit more. But in terms of certainly, any sort of building permit would probably give rise to potential issues if they weren't built to code, like you had noted. It may just become a building issue. But that's a good question, and I'll be sure to investigate. I don't have an answer right off the top of my head right now, but it's certainly, I would think that from a building perspective, if they weren't built to code, that they, now that they're legalized through a zoning process, that wouldn't address any of those deficiencies. But I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon?
Thank you. I think that you've pretty much already answered my question, but I just want to follow up on what Mayor Sealy brought up, is about these garden suites. And I just want to, if I'm understanding correctly, once the official plan amendment is adopted by County Council, then it will be up to the Puslinch Council to decide whether they're going to allow both garden suites and ARUs on the same property. Is that correct?
Correct. You through your zoning regulations, you would either, and that's not new. There are existing provisions that exist within the county that limit both garden suites and those types of, I guess, second units as they are now, from being on the same lot.
Okay.
I guess the one good thing is if there are already additional residential units on a property and someone is proposing to have a garden suite, they would have to go through that temporary zoning amendment, or that zoning bylaw amendment, to establish the temporary use. So we would have the opportunity to consider this and really understand the servicing issues and the siting problems that may arise. But hypothetically, yes, they could exist
Okay.
all together. But the zoning, hopefully zoning would help kind of sort that out in terms of how the municipality wishes for that to kind of fall out.
But so you had mentioned that septic is a big factor in making that consideration. Is there any other major things that we should be considering when it comes time for us to make that decision? And it almost kind of seems like by allowing a garden suite and an ARU, it's almost like a loophole. It seems kind of like a strange loophole to really actually allow two ARUs on the same property. So I'm just wondering, I'm just trying to wrap my head around what is a rational way of making that decision or that determination as to whether we should or shouldn't allow it.
Good question. And honestly, it may fall out differently in different municipalities in terms of how garden suites are utilized or preferenced over maybe potentially a permanent additional residential unit. So it's difficult. I would think that the township, through their zoning process, may consider that the permissions that exist through the additional residential units are efficient or provide what garden suites provide in terms of providing that additional form of housing. And so it may be that you say you clearly prohibit them from being established together, and if someone so chooses to have a garden suite over an additional residential unit, that's still an option, but they're not going to be together.
Okay.
It's really, I think it's going to be case dependent. But in terms of developing the zoning regulations, that's why we highlighted it, just because it's a potential pitfall for, for having these multiple units on the same lot.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jameson. I appreciate your report. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to bring to attention the possibility of those 4 units, which will be satisfied through our zoning. We can't anticipate every possibility. There could be somebody with enough property to have an ARU and a garden suite, depending on their large family. The septics can be addressed. So I just wanted to make it clear to council that there was an opportunity there to get 4 units. So I appreciate it, and we'll let you get on with your day. And I'll ask Ms. White Fox if she can read out the resolution, please.
The council receives a presentation by Jameson Picard, County of Wellington, regarding the additional residential units official plan amendment number 112, and that any additional township comments be forwarded to the County of Wellington for consideration.
All right, can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Bailey. Councillor Bulmer, you want to second that?
Yes. Second it.
Excellent. And all in favor, so Councillor Spoulos,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
In favor?
Councillor Gomer,
Support, in favor?
awesome, Councillor Goida,
In favor.
and I'm in favor as well. Excellent. Okay, thank you, Jameson, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda is the CRINS SIN RC updates regarding COVID-19. Any questions or comments on that one? No?
One.
Okay, Councillor Bulmer?
Just the only thing that stood out for me was they wanted to make sure that everybody had updated their contacts and the contact people. And since we changed several staff last fall, I just want to make sure our contacts were all updated with CRINS.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Anything else from anyone on council?
Well, are these mobile units something that we might have seen in Puslin?
I don't know, Mr. C, who can answer that?
Could possibly be yes. No, nobody knows for sure.
Sorry, Miss.
As part of the internet committee, I don't believe we've come across any that are temporary.
Mr. CAO, did you want to add to that?
I don't think, like Councillor Zapoulis just said, there aren't any right now, but depending on what proposals come forward from a provider, it could possibly come at some point. We don't know for sure.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is the Township of Puslinch Aggregate Resource Act comments. I'll start with Councillor Spoulos. Any questions or comments on that?
Just have thank staff for putting together all our council comments into one comprehensive package that's lends a lot of credibility to what we're saying. It's a very professionally written package. It's very good.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, no questions. Job well done.
Okay. Councillor Bulmer?
Thank you. Yeah, I think staff did a good job of putting it together, but I also think I got to give council some credit here for doing a lot of background work and making the residents feel like they had an opportunity to participate as well. I think this is the first time I've ever seen residents' comments that are fed to council make it through to a staff report. So I think there's more than enough to say good things about the whole process and gathering this. So thank you all.
Yeah, I want to echo those statements. It's, we have a new CAO that I'm not sure how many aggregate operations were in Perth East or East Perth. I'm sorry, I was going to butcher that, Mr. CAO, but you've taken this challenge on. You've been amazing at it. The report is amazing. And, you know, these proposed changes to the Aggregate Resource Act are industry driven. And, you know, municipalities are here to represent their constituents, and we've involved our constituents on these comments. The ball is now in the court of the Ministry of Natural Resources. They're hearing from the member municipalities, which I feel should be a priority over the industry. And we will wait and see the results of these. We were supportive of a number of the proposed changes. However, there was quite a few that we had concerns with, and I hope the ministry will hear our concerns and take that into serious consideration when they come out with their final report on the changes to the aggregate industry. As we know, it's one of the largest industries that affect Puslinch. It affects us with our growth. It affects us for our tax base indefinitely, and our road infrastructure. It's just one of those things that we're highly affected by. So thank you, staff, for your professional report. And Glenn, again, you know, it's been a wild ride this first, I don't know, how long have you been here? 6 months? It probably already feels like 2 years. And you've just assimilated excellent with us, and you're going to be an expert on aggregate by the time you retire.
Thank you. Definitely want to say that was a team effort. I just consolidated the comments that others put together. So team effort, council, like you said, a lot of council time in here and a lot of the public's time in here too. So thanks to everyone.
Excellent. Okay, so we will move on to intergovernmental affairs. We have a resolution. I'll have that read at the end. Is there any member of council that has one of these items that they would like to ask questions or speak to? Councillor Spoulos.
Yes, with respect to item E, City of Hamilton requests to regulate and enforce odor and lighting nuisances from grow-up operations. I understand the staff will be putting together a policy in 2021 to deal with this, with cannabis operations in general. And I'd like the staff to consider including these two elements as one of the issues of concern. It's not a concern now, but if we get more licenses, that might become a concern.
Okay. Who else? Any other, we'll go around the table on that. So Councillor Bailey, do you have any concerns on or comments on that? Or the City of Hamilton request to regulate and enforce odor and lighting nuisances?
Yeah, no concerns. I like what Councillor Cephas is proposing though, to keep this for our future needs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Balmer?
Yeah, I guess I share Councillor Sapoulis's concerns, but I also am concerned about actually properly considering who does what and who's responsible for what. Having gone through the approval of the dog food plant and understanding whose role it is to monitor and deal with odor, I'm not sure our municipality certainly has the skills for the mandate, the legislative mandate to deal with odor. That's clearly in the province's bailiwick. But I share the concerns around lighting, but I don't know if we need to limit our concerns regarding lighting to just grow ops. We had a concern early on with the Tim Hortons project in Guelph, which was driving our residents crazy, and lighting can be a problem from a variety of uses, and maybe we need to think of it in a broader perspective than just grow ops. And I don't know if staff has any comments on that kind of approach.
Well, Mr. CAO has a little bit of insight into the direction we might take with this odor and lighting from cannabis. Did you want to speak to that, Mr. CAO?
Sure. As Councillor Sapoulis mentioned, we are going to, as staff, be working with the county in developing a cannabis policy that would deal with all kinds of these issues. But it is specific to cannabis operations. It wouldn't be dealing with other types of odors from other types of facilities. That would need to be something that we would deal with in a separate matter. But we're going to look at all aspects that come to mind. You know, there might be traffic, there might be, you know, noise from vehicles loading at certain times of day, whatever. Who knows what might all come up and formulate the whole list of items. But we're going to do a complete consolidated approach from issues raised across the county, a joint effort, and then bring that forward to council.
And to add to those statements, specifically cannabis operations are provincially regulated and federally regulated. So I believe the intent would be to ask the province to take on that, you know, enforcement and policing of that. But I believe Councillor Sapoulis's reasoning for bringing this up is just to get it on the staff's radar for when we are developing the policies in 2021, that we can discuss, you know, asking the province to enforce it, or the feds, or whoever it may be that has the jurisdiction over it. And Councillor Sapoulis, I'll let you, do you have something to add to that?
No, I was going to mention what you mentioned with respect to the jurisdiction. It's the feds and the province who have a jurisdiction, and they're the ones who should be enforcing this, in the same vein as gravel pits are enforced by the province. We have no control over their operation, so they enforce them. So I see this as a parallel type situation.
Mm-hmm. So it's good to give staff a heads up that it's on our radar. And back to you, Councillor Balmer. When they were proposing the Halton truck inspection station on the Bousfield farm, the residents around there were concerned of lighting. So it can be a multitude of industries and situations that can cause some trouble. And, you know, maybe that's something we need to look at in the future is, you know, some bylaws for lighting, or, you know, when the planning process asks for experts to make sure it's mitigated. I don't know, but it's definitely good to have it on the staff's radar. Okay. So any other questions or comments from Councillor Sapoulis?
Yes, with respect to item 7, letter to Premier Ford by the Morrison Bypass Coalition. I'd like to thank for getting this committee reactivated and keeping up the pressure to have our Morstan bypass on the front burner.
Yeah, Rory's been excellent to work with, and it was great to see the updated signatures and the continued support for this bypass. And was the letter from the Minister of Transportation, was that on this one to me? Have you guys seen that yet? Anyways, the Minister of Transport thanked us for our continued advocacy for the bypass. And in the letter, it states that they're going to announce their additional projects in the coming months, and that they had put a pause on the Halton Truck Inspection Station for the Bousfield Farm. They're pausing it. They're going to reevaluate their needs. They don't feel they maybe need as big of a facility. And so I was very optimistic about that letter, hoping, I mean, when the announcement comes in, it'll be 2 months now, they said 3. We may not be on the good end of things, but it would be nice to have a decision either way. However, in saying that, I don't know if you've driven down Highway 6 very often. They brought in a crew to demolish one of the houses that they had purchased for the bypass. There's been more activity in the lands behind the Fielding Farm for surveying. In behind where all the dirt bikers were riding, there's been more activity there. So maybe we might get lucky, might get a nice announcement in the next couple months. So keep our fingers crossed. Councillor Spills.
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering, that letter you're mentioning from the province, I was wondering if you can have it put on the next council agenda for everybody to be aware of it.
I think it's item B, Councillor Spills. I thought it was in here. What's item B under intergovernmental affairs? Is that the one? Should be that one. But if it's not, yes, I will. I apologize.
It is there. You're
Okay.
right. I'm sorry, I skipped over item B.
Sorry. Yeah. Anyways, that was a nice letter to receive. So, okay.
Just one quick.
Councillor. Yep. Councillor Goida.
Sorry, just one quick point on that letter that you speak of, Mayor Sealy, from the Minister of Transportation. Excuse me. I know that this is a public agenda and the public can see it, but I'm wondering if maybe it might be just a thoughtful thing for us to do to send a copy of this letter to the property owners who would have been impacted by the inspection station, just so that they're aware of what's happening.
I did call them personally and let them know, but I didn't send the letter.
Okay.
I can follow up with them.
Okay. Either way, I
did call them. Yeah, I let.
Okay.
So the ones I let know were the westbound inspection station. They're the only ones that have contacted me with concerns. Eastbound, I believe, is the Weber family or Weber, if I mispronounce that. I haven't received any, so I have not informed them on that one. But yes, the Bousfields and the McLean Farm, I did let them know. So
Okay, thanks.
but thank you for that. Any other
And
comments?
Russell
on
Law, I think, was the other one.
He's the brother-in-law to the Bousfields?
No, Russell Law, across on the
Russell Law.
eastbound side.
Okay, that one I did not contact, so I would need staff to get me their contact info if possible. So, okay, any other questions or comments on those intergovernmental affairs correspondence? I'll ask Ms. White-Fox to read the resolution, please.
That the intergovernmental affairs correspondence listed on the council agenda for May 20th, 2020 council meeting be received.
And can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spillis, Councillor Bailey? Yeah, okay, all in favor? Councillor Spillis,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
In favor?
Councillor Ballmer,
In favor?
Councillor Goida?
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Okay, we don't have any delegations. Reports, none. Finance reports. We have 3 here. The first one, Finance 2020-018. I assume Ms. Hassan is here to take questions. Do you have any questions for Mrs. Hassan on the fourth quarter financial report? Councilor Spills?
Yes, the surplus that we have identified, I was wondering when can we expect a report on where it's going to be reallocated through the various other reserves we have?
Hi, Councillor Sapoulis. We'll be at an upcoming council meeting now that audit is over, and it will include different factors such as the operating surplus, the capital budget surplus, and just some information about the contributions to reserves in 2019. So it will be at an upcoming council meeting.
Okay,
Hopefully in the next couple of council meetings now that the audit is over.
Yeah.
okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Councillor Bailey, or sorry, any other questions for Mary Hassan on that? Councillor Bulmer, do you have any? I don't see your video, so.
I'm still here, no questions.
Okay, Ms. Whitefox, you mind reading that resolution, please?
That report FIN 2020-018 regarding the fourth quarter financial report 2019 be received.
Can I get a mover, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Bulmer, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor? Councillor Spoulos?
In favor?
Councillor Bailey?
In favor?
Councillor Bulmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goida?
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. And then we have the report for 2020-19 first quarter financial report. Oh, sorry, the first one I read wrong. It was 2020-18 fourth quarter, and this is 2020-19 first quarter. So I apologize. I mispronounced the year on the first one. Any questions or comments for the Director of Finance? No? Can I get Ms. Whitefox to read that resolution, please?
That report FIN 2020-019 regarding the first quarter financial report 2020 be received.
Okay, can I get a mover for that, please?
Sure, I'll move it.
Councillor Spoulos, seconded by Councillor Goida. All in favor? Councillor Spoulos,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
In favor?
Councillor Bulmer,
Favor.
Councillor Bulmer. No, I already called you. Sorry, Councillor Goida.
In favor.
I can't multitask. Can't look away from the screen. My brain just goes. Okay, and then the last report, Finance 2020-020, 2020 final tax levy and rates. Any questions or comments for the Director? No? Councillor Spoulos?
Yes, there is a paragraph in the report that suggests that the county is looking at the second and third remittances. The township could submit to the county only the portion in the proportion that collections are received. I'd like to suggest that we endorse this proposal. I understand that there was a meeting today at the county. I don't know how that went, but certainly any money that we don't have to pay and borrow to cover shortfalls to the county is a bonus to us.
Yes, Councillor Sapoulis. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's what I was just going to ask you to speak to that, please.
Okay, so the resolution prepared by Courtney has taken that into account, and Courtney will read that resolution. I just also wanted to just provide a verbal update to council as it relates to the April 30th installment that just passed a couple of weeks ago. And so we just did a comparison of the April 30th installment when compared to the previous years as it relates to tax arrears outstanding, and our collections were just modestly lower than the previous year based on the current tax arrears outstanding as of April 30th, 2020 when compared to April 30th, 2019. This is just very preliminary at this stage, and we are still in the early days of understanding the full financial implications associated with the pandemic, but this is a good first sign in terms of that the collections are just modestly lower than last year.
Okay. So the other thing I just want to state about this resolution, I like the direction you're going, Councillor Spoulos. However, it was presented at IF and HR this morning, and it still hasn't been approved by Committee of the Whole of the county, but yet we're going to support it. So if by chance it doesn't make it to Committee of the Whole or doesn't get approved, then we're going to have a resolution supporting something that didn't get approved. Would this not be more prudent to maybe wait a meeting and deal with it then to see how it goes at the county level for Committee of the Whole?
I was wondering if our CEO could answer that question.
Yeah, I kind of see the mayor's point that if we if we support something that doesn't make it to county council, then it is kind of a resolution that's hanging there that doesn't do anything. Although it could, on the other hand, it could just be looked at too as something where we are voicing our support for something that just didn't get approved. You know, it could be comments on a planning matter or something like that too.
Yeah.
So it could be either way.
Can I have Ms. Hoyfox read the motion, please, just so I can understand how it's worded?
Sure. I'm just going to read the one portion about the proportional tax then. So
Yes,
it
please.
states that council supports the County of Wellington's proposal to remit the second and third remittances due to the County of Wellington in the same proportion as tax collections received for those periods.
Okay, and Director of Finance, Ms. Hassan, you probably already mentioned it just 30 seconds ago, but what are the specific conversations with the treasurers, specifically at the county over this? Is that the direction?
The treasurers are very supportive of Mr. DeHart's proposal to the committee and to county council at an upcoming council meeting. So.
Okay, I think I'd be comfortable supporting it because it will just show our support behind it, and it most likely will make it through anyways. And if it doesn't, we just supported something that wasn't passed, but that won't be the case. So, any other questions or comments on that, Councillor Bailey? Councillor Burmer?
Yeah, I think we should support it. I'd be happy if it said we appreciate the recommendation of the county and would support it being adopted. I think it shows how much of a partnership we have with the county, and they understand the issues we're dealing with.
Councillor Guida?
Yes, I agree. I think that the wording that we support the proposal is good, and hopefully it just gives a little bit of puts a little bit of weight behind the decision when it does come to the committee.
Okay, Mr. CAO, or was just your chair squeak?
Just a squeak, sorry.
It's all good. So this is great news. Maybe Councillor Spillis will want a friendly amendment to add the language that Councillor Bulmer just mentioned. I will tell you, shaking your head, Matthew, I will tell you that this is a 180-degree turn for the county. When COVID-19 first hit, I mentioned this on the mayor's talks, and I barely finished enunciating, will we pay what we collect? And it was no, you pay what you pay, or what you owe. And they've changed their decision on it. So they're understanding that this is a relationship where we're all in the same family. So it's excellent news. So I'm comfortable supporting it. Okay, so Councillor Spillis moved that motion. Can I get a seconder for that, please? Councillor Bailey. All right, so all in favor. Councillor Spillis, I hope you're in favor.
In favor?
Councillor Bailey. Yes. Can I hear you say it?
In
Councillor
favor,
Bailey?
yeah.
Yeah. I get your mute button a little closer. Councillor Bulmer.
In favor, thank you, Councillor Spoulis.
Yep. Councillor Guida.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. No, too much talking. Oh, and I just want to say, Director of Finance, I'm really appreciative of the fact that you're getting caught up with your finance reports. You're in the same situation where there was a lot of changeover. You were busy running a municipality along with trying to complete your regular duties. And I see here you're close, so don't feel that we are being critical of you whatsoever. We know you're working very hard for us and from home with a young family. So thank you very much for everything you're doing. I do.
Sorry, go ahead.
And I'm just glad to see through these auditor reports and that it seems like the township is in good financial situation, and you're a large part of that. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Sully, and I wanted to thank all of council, and I also wanted to thank the finance team because it can never be done by one person. So thank you to everyone.
Well, make sure you pass on our appreciation to them as well.
I will.
It's obvious we don't see them right now, not being able to go into the office, but. So.
I will. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so now we're going to move on to administrative department. We have report ADM 2020-013. This is our second time kind of seeing this. Mr. CEO, did you need to speak of that or just open up for questions from council?
First, this is where we had the one additional item. It was going to be put on first, or the clear cable one. sorry, we announced at the beginning of the meeting there.
Or you're cutting out on me. Which,
We, this is the additional item. We were going to take care of it first.
okay,
And I'll do my best to explain. I apologize for the short notice, and maybe Councillor Sapoulis, you've been heavily involved in this. If I missed something, if you could jump in and correct that. So basically, I'll just give you a quick Reader's Digest version of where we're at with regards to the broadband project in the township. As we know, and as you're experiencing through the meeting, sometimes we have some questionable internet connections. And we're trying to find ways to expand that and improve that service. There's a funding program that is available, and we need to put forward a technical plan that has a good business case and that is technically feasible to be qualifying for some of that funding that's going to be available through the federal program. In order to do that, obviously we don't have the skills or resources in-house to do that. In working with the committee and the chair of the committee and Councillor Sapoulis, what we've taken a look at is to create that plan. What we need is someone that does have the technical expertise to put that together for us to have a plan that's technically feasible, that has an appropriate business case, so that when we put that out to an RFP to obtain a partner to go in for the funding program, that it's something that does have a reasonable chance of success. So what we are looking at doing is partnering with two people or two organizations. One would be the University of Guelph through their program, and Dr. Humbly, who we've met with and is offered her support along with her team for this undertaking, where she could do some supportive work in terms of gathering the necessary data and information that's needed as part of the project. And then we would work with also the firm here, Clear Cable, who's a fairly local firm. They've done this work in extensive areas across the country, actually, and even outside of the country, a lot with municipalities our size and some larger ones as well, to put this exact type of thing together. So what we are requesting, and again, I apologize for the short notice of just getting put on the agenda today, but received some confirmation through Clear Cable last night to respond to some questions, and we would like to get started if at all possible. This would be an economic development initiative through the municipality to try and stimulate some interest from the big companies who can come in and maybe entrepreneurial firms who might be interested in expanding service into the municipality as well. But for us to do anything, we need a plan put together, and we need some technical expertise to put that plan together. So this firm could do that in working with the University of Guelph too. So what we're saying is we're going to need approximately $25,000 as seed money to start this. That would be portions to go to University of Guelph to get the student working on that, plus the work that would go to Clear Cable. Just a short notice, we don't have the exact financing plan available for this yet, but I would definitely be bringing that after consultation with our treasurer, how to best finance that, just as an initiative to try and get better internet service across our municipality. That's something we're hearing consistently, and I think a number of members of council are hearing that as well. Maybe Councillor Sapoulis, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, and first of all, on a normal business practice, we would have put this in the last year's proposed budget. Unfortunately, at that time, the only funding that was available was from the feds, and the feds had this condition that I mentioned before. If there's a hexagonal area that has the required service, then you're out of luck. I only became aware of this grant program when we went to the Roma conference in January, and as a result of that, we've been pushing it through the committee, our committee, as well as our CAO meeting with Clear Cable and meeting with the University of Guelph and coming up with a plan. So this is the plan. My concern is if we don't do anything, we'll miss the opportunity. Right now, what's happened is the COVID crisis has heightened the inadequate internet service we have. And I personally think that the internet service is like a utility. It's like anything that we rely on these days, home heating, electricity. And this to me is you can't function without the internet anymore, especially in COVID crisis. You have to work from home. You can't work from home, then you're out of luck type of thing. So I would ask that council consider this request from the CAO and allow us to move forward to make a success, an application to the province later this year.
Okay, I'll take that as a move by you, Councillor Spoulos. Can I get a seconder for that so we can discuss it? Councillor Goida? Okay, all right. So Councillor Spoulos said his piece, Councillor Bailey.
Haven't had much time to think about this, but I guess like Glenn said, I'd just like to see where the financial, component will be, where to get the 25,000 from. But it sounds like an initiative we really should be supporting. Like Councillor Spoulos said, we need it. We need the broadband, and I think it's high on a list of priorities. So we should be moving forward with this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bulmer?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to get a better understanding of, we recently, there were, was it 2 letters of support or 1 letter of support again for 2 companies doing some tests. They were going to do some projects here. Can you help me understand how this fits in with those 2 companies that are already proposing to do some sort of testing here in the township for expanded service?
Yes, Councilor Bulmer. The 2 applicants were primarily responding to the CRTC call for filling out the hexagonal areas. And 2 hexagonal areas that we have are at the eastern side of the township that border, that also span into the adjacent municipality. The remainder part of the township is supposedly, according to the CRTC, within these hexagonals that have an internet service. Well, we know we don't have the internet service. The fact that if a cable runs through the area and it does have a capability for it, that's considered by the CRTC as you're covered. You don't have to worry about it. Well, from personal experience, I know there's a Rogers cable running up and down County Road 34. I can't access it. I don't know what it does. It could be a trunk run or whatever the case may be, but it's there. And this area here is considered fully serviced by the CRTC rules. So this proposal is to go after the provincial funding. The provincial funding, I asked a question at the Roma conference. Are you going to limit yourself to the CRTC criteria of these 25 square kilometer hexagonals? And they said, no, they'll do whatever they feel is reasonable. And I'm sure you can talk to your neighbors, Council Bulmer, and they'll explain to you that internet service is crappy everywhere. Especially in the areas that have hilly terrain.
Thank you. So if I could, Mr. Chair, just to clarify then, what we're dealing with here is similar to what we dealt with the mapping regarding agricultural lands and wetlands and several other provincial or federal based mappings, that it's showing several cells that from a certain scale tell you one thing, but when you ground proof it, it actually isn't that, the whole cell isn't filled up that way. So you're telling us is that what this proposal is to fill the gaps and to ground proof the mapping that was done at a federal level. Because of the terrain we have here, it creates all sorts of holes which are not captured by the federal mapping and the federal programs then.
In essence, that's correct. The proposal from Clear Cable is supposedly to go at that level, and my understanding is that they will work with our committee, and our committee has been busy looking at where the areas are lacking service and as well as where there is cable. I don't know whether or not this cable is accessible to to us or not, but certainly hopefully Clear Cable can do that through their proposal.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that we're not spending money to duplicate things. That's why I think it's so important that we make sure that, as you know, this, since it didn't go through the budget process, I want to make sure that we're using it to fill in gaps that other levels or other programs, or actually to qualify us for programs that other mapping may not otherwise qualify us for. So from what I understand, it seems like it's a reasonable investment for the amount of grants and the outcome that we could receive from it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Goyda?
Yeah, I thank you very much, Councillor Bulmer, for bringing that up. That's perhaps something I didn't think of, but I really want to commend Councillor Zapoulis on the work that you're doing on this, because I agree with you wholeheartedly that the internet, especially right now during this time, should be more like a utility and not a luxury that only some people can get it. And I agree that it's an economic development issue, and I think it's important. And I think that $25,000 of seed money to get a clear technical report is, I can't foresee that anyone in this township that suffers from poor internet is going to give us a hard time about spending $25,000 on increasing our chances of getting better internet. So I would support spending this money to increase those chances.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, respond to Councillor Goyda.
Sure.
Councillor, yes, the committee, I applaud our chair, Glenn James, who's headed up the committee, and as well as the various members of the committee have put in their individual expertise. I'm just convinced, as far as I'm concerned, and these people on the committee have worked hard to at least get to where we are today. And I just encourage wholeheartedly proceeding forward.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Zapoulis, for your hard work on this portfolio. I'm supportive of it, and hopefully we're successful. I know for certain there's fiber in the ground through Aberfoyle. It comes up, it goes under the 401, and it's in Morriston, but people don't have access to it. It's so this might identify, you know, an opportunity in Morriston and all through Aberfoyle. So that's great. Do we have so that resolution? So I'm going to call all in favor, and we'll start with Councillor Zapoulis.
In favor?
Councillor Bailey.
In favor?
Councillor Bulmer.
Forgive me, but I don't recall any actual resolution. What was the actual resolution that we're voting on, Mr. Chair? I heard Councillor Zapoulis talk about being in support of it in the beginning, but I'm not sure of a clear resolution here.
I can read one for you here. That we authorize the municipality to proceed with the Clear Cable and University of Guelph to undertake the technical work to support the funding application for a total of $25,000.
Okay, I'll get a mover for that. Then will be Councillor Zapoulis, and Councillor Bulmer. You want to second that?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. All in favor, Councillor Zapoulis.
Yes.
Councillor Bailey.
Favor.
Councillor Bulmer.
Yes, in favor.
And Councillor Goyda.
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Okay, so then you're still up, Mr. CAO, for this corporate work plan?
Okay, so this is a document that you've seen before in draft with a number of proposed changes in it. Those changes have all been incorporated into it. Have not yet had a chance to go through the goals and objectives that were identified as part of the start of the term that was referred to by Councillor Goyda. I'm hoping to be able to have that for you at a upcoming meeting shortly. But this was just all of the stuff that was in the budget that you've approved for this year. So all those changes have been incorporated so that, and the dates have been adjusted based on what you proposed. There's, like I indicated in the report, this is a living document. And just to show you that, yesterday received word through Public Works Department that they're actually now proposing to defer the item number 23, the 1-ton to next year, just because of, well, maybe I can just give you a brief overview, and then Mr. Fowler could speak to it as well if he has anything to add. But basically, we had to do some work for it for safetying it this year, and based on that investment, we wanted to realize the value of that investment. So not do the work and then sell it right away. Let's try and make use of that work that we needed to do, and then we'll purchase it next year. Also, then that gives us more opportunity to prepare the documents, and purchasing of equipment such as this is kind of a challenge right now in the whole COVID situation anyways. Maybe, Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Not really, just the fact of, you know, what was required for safety this year was a substantial amount, and for us to spend that kind of money only in the near future to have it go to auction is not worth, in my opinion, the township's funds. The repairs that have been made, I can't make guarantees, but they should increase the longevity of this unit for at least another year, and that will buy us time to properly go forward with the tender process. It actually gives us a little bit more time too. Now we can establish a tender in the fall for next spring. So I'm confident that with added maintenance costs, this unit will survive another year.
Okay, my concern is that when we're ordering plow trucks, they're 18 months, you know, or out to delivery date. So, you know, we get into putting out for tender this fall. What is it now? May. This thing's going to come up for safety again in May, and then you're going to throw another, I don't even want to know what you put into it, $10,000, whatever it was, and then we're just chasing our tail. I'm not in favor of postponing asset management replacement items. I get we had to put the money into it, but can you speak to, if we put this out for tender now, what would the delivery date? Will it come by May next year, and then instead of delaying to the fall to put the tender out?
One of the challenges also right now is the fact that there's a short supply of cabin chassis by the three major manufacturers, Ford, GM, and Dodge. Currently, there's a 6-month waiting list for cabin chassis 1 tons, and anything that was made before the COVID pandemic is staying in the United States. So our suppliers up here are having a difficult time trying to source new cabin chassis, and any already established units on the ground seems that the suppliers are asking an arm and a leg for. So to kind of reset this, my opinion is, I think it's worth our while to wait at least 6 months until, you know, the major auto manufacturers can get up and running and establish more inventory on the ground.
What we'll do as part of that is we're going to make sure that we have everything ready to go here on our end, so that when we can hear through our municipal contacts and our suppliers, and that when it looks like units will be available, then that will be in a position that we're going to be ready to move right at that point then.
Okay, that makes me feel better. I don't want it to turn into, you know, one department being the target to make up the shortfalls of, you know, maybe lack of you know, tax payments. You know, these equipment, we need them, they have to be replaced, and if we prolong their life, then we get into a huge maintenance cycle, and it's turns very expensive very quickly. So I understand that.
Absolutely.
I understand that, you know, you could put a tender out right now and somebody's going to throw you a huge number because there isn't the availability of the chassis, and that's not beneficial to our community either. So I appreciate that info that we'll be ready to go once things hopefully get back to normal. And
Yep.
yeah, and hopefully we can get something here in the spring. So any other questions or comments from council on that report from Mr. CEO? Do we lose Councillor Goyda? Are you there? Oh, yeah. Just making sure we still have quorum. Councillor Spillis doesn't move much, so it's hard to tell if he's a mannequin or not. Okay, so no further questions on that work plan report. Yeah, we have a resolution. Sorry, Councillor Bailey.
I just had a question. Hang on, I'll
Yeah, shut
turn
your
my,
video off.
turn my
There you go.
video off. Item 38, the Morrison backstop replacement, I see was checked off April. It doesn't say completed. Maybe Mike can give us a little update on that.
So I heard most of that. I don't know if the director of Public Works heard it, but she's asking for an update on the Morrison backstop if it was completed. I believe that's what you were looking for, Councillor Bailey.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Feller.
Yes, the complete project is now complete, and it's been done for about 2 weeks now. Basically ready to go for whenever fall is to resume, and we came in at our budgeted price.
Great. So then I had another question. I'm sorry, I don't know the number. The painting of the Morrison Meadows washrooms, I think it's due to happen in the fall. Just wondered if we needed to wait till fall, since no one's using the washrooms all summer. Wondered if now was a better time to bump up that if we have the staff to do that.
Mr. Fowler, did you hear most of that?
Sorry, I didn't. Could
So
someone?
yeah, I can. So she was asking about the painting of Morrison Meadows washrooms, and it was slated for the fall. And she was wondering if there's a possibility of, and Councillor Bailey, correct me if I'm misspeaking, a possibility of having them done earlier. I maybe missed that, or due to the fact that they're not being used.
I would say it's a combination of both. There's still concern just the close proximity of the washrooms of having more than one person in there doing the work. That is something I can discuss with my crew as far as obviously gloves and masks being worn. These guys and gals have been together now for 3 months, so it's almost like their own little bubble community now where no one has gotten sick. So there is a possibility we can start up earlier. That is something once a couple major operating initiatives are done as far as maintenance gravel and calcium is applied. That's something that we can definitely look into.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions on the work plan? Seeing none, okay. Ms. Whitefox, can you read that resolution, please?
That report ADM 2020-013 regarding the 2020 corporate work plan be received, and that Township of Puslinch Council endorses the 2020 corporate work plan as presented.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Spoulis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor, Councillor Spoulis?
In favor?
Councillor Balmer?
In favor?
Oops, I skipped Councillor Bailey.
In
Sorry.
favor?
Councillor Goida?
In favor.
Okay, I'm in favor as well. That's carried. All right, so next is the report, letter of support for Enbridge funding application. I don't believe we have a resolution for that one. So just any questions or comments from council on that one?
I'm sorry, Mayor, we do have a resolution for that one.
Oh, we do. I didn't see it, sorry. Okay, so, all right, well, Councillor Spoulis, I saw you raise your hand for a question.
Yes, it's a good first step to try to get additional gas service into our township. My question relates to will there two questions. First of all, will there be other opportunities for it to service investigate servicing other areas of Puslinch? And second of all, I know that there was a push to have service provided to the residents in the area of Little Lake. And I was wondering, was that area considered as part of this investigation?
Mr. CAO will be able to answer at least the second part of that question, and I'm not sure, and hopefully the first question. Mr.
Yeah,
CAO?
I can try and answer both. This particular location was selected in consultation with Enbridge based on the best chances of success for the parameters that were put forward by the province for the funding program, and that being basically to try and get the the highest number of new connections with the amount of funding that they're making available. So basically what they're looking for is a higher cluster of potential connections close to existing infrastructure so that there's a minimum amount of piping that you have to install to service those customers. So the reason that this one was selected was because based on Enbridge's evaluation, they felt that met the criteria the closest. Yes, there were some considerations given to the area that you mentioned up by Little Lake, because I know that there's been a number of discussions going on with getting gas to service that community. The challenge that was identified during the technical evaluation was that the capacity of the gas line that is closest to it wasn't sufficient to service that additional volume that would be required to service that area. So what that means is they'd have to run a gas line from somewhere further away, which is going to be considerably more money. So basically your cost per connection goes up. So based on this funding round, this was the most cost-effective project that they recommended putting forward. That's why they went with this one. What we've been told is that this was indicated to be one of the funding applications that the province was going to be issuing for projects such as this, and that they anticipate additional ones coming in the future, where we could look at those other locations and other areas around the municipality as well. But this one was considered to be the one with the best chance of success.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. So, did we read the resolution for that one? Is there a resolution? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I can read it now. That report ADM 2020-014 regarding the Enbridge funding application natural gas service extension be received, and that the Township of Portland Council provides a letter of support to Enbridge to be included in their funding application to the province.
Can I get a mover for that, please? Councillor Balmer?
Okay, I move.
Awesome. Seconder, Councillor Goyda?
Sure.
Okay, all in favor? Councillor Spools?
In favor?
Councillor Bailey?
In favor?
Councillor Balmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goyda?
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. Okay. Next one is the ADM proposed amendment to the OTA regulations. Oh, yes. Maybe Mr. CEO could speak quickly, briefly to council on what we're discussing here.
Sure.
Thank you.
This was identified as a item to give some consideration to through an AMO alert that came out a while ago. And just following up on that, we were asked to get some additional information, which we've done. And the comment date to the province is soon. So this is the last council meeting before those dates. So basically the Reader's Digest version of this is if municipalities want to allow the use of municipal roadways by all-terrain vehicles, they passed a bylaw allowing such. This was back in 2016, I believe, somewhere around then. No one in Wellington County has done that, just for everyone's information. Portland did not do it either. All the proposed amendments right now, all they are is to expand that list so that if you did pass a bylaw allowing the use, that these additional vehicles, so the additional vehicles that they're proposing would be included would be vehicles like an Argo and plain dirt bikes would be added to that list of ATVs as well. So that way you would then have, if you passed a bylaw previously, you could then pass an amending bylaw that would enable those other ones. So if you're interested in doing that, you can submit those comments, or you could just do nothing since we didn't pass a bylaw before. And it doesn't really pertain to Portland since there isn't anything in Wellington County anyways, but that's your decision. They're just, province is asking for comments if you'd like to make them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Spools, any questions or comments?
I saw the report details prepared by staff with respect to the concerns we have on liability issues, ensuring that our roads are capable of taking these all-terrain vehicles. I really don't think there's a need for us to comment on this. The only comment I ask is you, Mayor, the fact that we have this dirt bike issue in Morriston, is there anything in here that we should comment on that might help that situation?
I think they're completely separate. You know, part of the issue is the Wellington County has not passed a bylaw either. Right now, the OPP is enforcing if they cross their roads, so I assume they could cross ours. But I think they're two separate issues. And honestly, I agree with you. I don't believe we should comment on it. Just because we haven't passed a bylaw and it's a bit new, and we can always visit it in the future. I struggle with this one. I read the report as well about the liability issues, but we are a farming community. We have members of the community that I know they run their ATV from one farm to the other with a helmet on. And if we start banning them, I think we're going to cause a lot of pushback. If we do nothing, then we just kind of leave it in the hands of the OPP to use their discretion at the time of the incident. So that's kind of my gut feeling right now, Councillor Spillis. I don't know if that helps answer your question or not.
It does, thank you.
Okay. So Councillor Bailey?
Just a second. Thanks, Glenn, for clarifying that. That made it much more clear to me. Yeah, I guess I'm not prepared to make too many comments for this. You know, unless we've had local groups or businesses come forward asking for this kind of change, I feel like we should sort of let it lie where it is.
Okay, Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just so I guess this is a proposed change at the province right now to expand the vehicles that would be permitted within an existing, that a municipality could allow under the previous legislation, provincial legislation from 2016. But I guess my question for staff is, the discussion we were having at Safe Communities a while back and at council previously was related to the change of the province, where they've changed the onus from being municipalities previously had the ability to approve off-road vehicles, and they were working on making a change where the default would be the other way around, where it'd be by default allowed everywhere, and a municipality would have to then adopt a bylaw to prohibit them in their municipality. Where have I misunderstood something here? I'm trying to figure out which one is which.
Mr. CEO?
I have not heard yet of the second instance where it's permitted unless you say no. I haven't heard that as proposed legislation come forward yet. That might have been something they're considering, but based on any information I could gather, that's not part of this amendment. They're just looking at adding the two vehicle classes to the list of what's approved.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Councillor Goyda.
Sorry. I'm kind of with you, Mayor Sealy and Councillor Sapoulis, to just kind of leave it as is for now. And if down the road it comes to a point where we are going to write a specific bylaw that we're going to allow them, then at that point maybe we can consider this. But for now, I think we just leave it alone.
Yeah, I see a couple differences between an Argo and a dirt bike and the ATVs and UTVs, which are the UTVs generally you drive them, where an ATV you sit on it, but it has four wheels. And the ATVs and UTVs have headlights, brake light, tail light. So if they're on the roads at night, dark, dusk, dawn, they're visible. Whereas a dirt bike and an Argo, I'm not convinced they do. So those would be my comments if we were going to put comments in, is that any off-road vehicle has sufficient lighting or be considered, have to be standardized. Doesn't have to be signalized. You can ride a motorcycle and you can use hand signals, but you have to have a headlight, you have to have a tail light, and you have to have a brake light. But I'm fine with leaving it as is. I believe those things could probably be addressed in a zoning bylaw. Mr. CAO, could you comment on that? I know you're not a member of the Ontario Provincial Police, but would that be something, if we were to address this on our roads, that we could require off-road vehicles to have a tail light and a headlight to be on our roads?
I'd have to look into that further to see if we have authority to require something like that. I'm not sure how it would fall under a zoning bylaw, but I'd have to look into it to comment on that one.
Well, if it ever rears its head again and we start dealing with it, just remember that I
Yep.
mentioned it, and I
Okay.
don't think you need to spend much time on it, but council's comfortable with just leaving it as it is and receive it for information. I see a bunch of nods ahead. Do we have a, I gotta pull it up. So, township. So just, Courtney, if you can read the resolution and just after be received for information, if you could, please.
That report ADM 2020-015 regarding the proposed amendment to the Ontario Traffic Act Regulation 316-03 be received for information.
All right, can I get a mover for that, please? Somebody.
Move.
I'll move
Councillor
it.
Spillis, seconded by Councillor Bailey. All in favor, Councillor Spillis?
In favor?
Councillor, where do I go? Councillor Bailey?
Favor.
Councillor Ballmer?
In favor.
Councillor Goida?
In favor.
And I'm in favor as well. Okay, Ms. Whitefox, do we have Megan available for this next one? The Clare Mulpey secondary plan?
Yes, I'm going to move her over now.
Hi, Megan. Can she hear me? There she go.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of council.
Hi.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Thank you for waiting patiently for us.
Not a problem. So did you want me to just do a bit of a kind of an overview of the report, and then I can be available for any questions?
Absolutely. Quick, high level. We've seen most of this before, but if there's any changes, highlight them, and then we'll open up to questions.
Okay. Yeah, so the intent of this report is pretty much twofold. It's to identify that this one, I guess, of the secondary plan process is ongoing, and that the township has been asked to comment on an additional environmental assessment. And this assessment has been provided to Harding environmentalists to review and provide comments separately from this report. And then the other intent of this report is to highlight that the previously preferred community structure plan has changed a little bit and has been approved. The updated plan has been approved by City Council in 2019. So some of the changes to the community structure plan related to the Clare Maltby secondary plan is the urban and rural transition area has been extended along Victoria Road. There's been an increase in low density residential development proposed within it, and a bit of a reduction in both medium and high density development proposed in the plan. There's kind of been I would say kind of a refinement and increase to the overall natural heritage system throughout the secondary plan, including the installation and proposal for a moraine ribbon for active and passive transportation and activities along this natural heritage system. And then ultimately, these changes have all been, have created some changes to the road outline and network locations of where proposed schools and parks and stormwater management ponds are. And these changes essentially have been determined by stakeholder input, and other environmental impacts have informed these changes. So that is it from like a very high level, kind of like the summary of all the changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Megan. Councillor Spillis, any questions or comments for Megan?
No questions of Megan, but a concern I have is on the report page 2, or our council package 248, the last 2 bullets. We had provided a motion, a resolution, I should say, 2 years ago, suggesting with respect to the landscaping requirements and the buffering, and you cite in the report that it has not been documented officially. I was wondering, I'd like to suggest that we reiterate our position with respect to these 2 bullets.
Megan, do you want to comment on that?
Sorry, maybe I would comment on that. So my understanding is that these comments were received by the city. However, they didn't update their policy direction document essentially as requested by the township because the document's essentially a very high-level document that will inform the detailed policies of the secondary plan. So it's very likely that these more detailed policies will take the township's comments into consideration. But this report is intended, and this speaks to Councillor Sepoulis's comment, to reiterate the interest of the township to see that strong wording and specification of the landscaping be incorporated in these detailed policies.
I'm supportive of that. Okay. Did you have a further follow-up question? I'll come back to you, Councillor Sepoulis. Councillor, oh my gosh, I keep moving people on my screen. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, I'm just coming in new to this, so I kind of get caught up on the changes versus what was, and I don't know if this is a question for this
Can I just ask you to turn your video off, please?
Sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is the level to be asking this question, but just looking at the density, low density, wondering if anything is specific to affordable housing.
Well, can I just step in for a sec?
Yeah.
Councillor Bailey, are you wanting to advocate for affordable housing in the city of Guelph, or what direction are you taking with that?
Well, I know it's an issue. So I'm wondering if they're trying to address it with this proposal.
Well, I might be wrong, but our concerns are just a buffer to maintain, the rural charm on our border, and them moving and changing the density. That's all governed by provincial policy, and that's why there was a change here. Initially, they were directed to have certain density in the secondary plan, and I believe that the province moved away from that, so it didn't have to be as dense, so they've changed the scope. I think our focus should stay on that buffer between our borders, trying to maintain that rural charm for our constituents that live on the boundary roads. And I wouldn't focus as much on whether there's affordable housing, medium density, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that's all. So that's kind of where this has changed. And that's why Councillor Sepoulis brought up the concern that we had passed a motion asking for almost specific language in this policy, and they have yet to update it, but Megan's telling us it's high level still. So I am supportive of Councillor Sepoulis's recommendation to ask or bring it back to their attention, to make sure it doesn't get overlooked. So does that help you a little bit?
Yeah, it does, and I'm definitely in favor of doing favorable transitions.
Yeah,
I think when you're driving toward Guelph, the larger buildings are a little bit offensive.
Well, and to bring you up to speed, there's a good example of it on Victoria Road as you're heading north. The old where Summerfield comes out, they have great big berms. The trees are grown up quite large now.
Yeah.
And then as you get closer to Arkle, it's now multi-story or single-story commercial built right up to the boundary. So it's quite a discrepancy there, and that's what we're trying to mitigate with our requests. So,
yeah.
Okay, Councillor Bowman.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand that this is still high level, but I think it warrants repeating our concern, and I think it also warrants requesting that they acknowledge in writing that it will be addressed at a later date, or they accept our concerns and will address them at a later date in more detailed levels. Because just to assume they're going to do it, I understand from a planning perspective that would be the appropriate professional thing to do, but that doesn't guarantee us it's going to happen. And when I think back of the issues we've had, dealing with Town Line Road and trying to ensure there's room for any future road expansions on the urban side, I think it's very important that we push for these buffers, not solely for the urban-rural transition, but to ensure that the urban impact stays on the urban side.
That's a great point, Councillor Bowman. Where are we here? Councillor Goyda.
Yeah, I definitely agree with continuing to push for that stronger wording and the buffering requirements in the rural transition area as it's outlined in this report, and also continuing to enforce the comment about it still talks about increased building setbacks on Victoria and Maltby Road will be encouraged, but it still does not say required. And I think we really should push for that language. So on that point, I'm in full support. I do have one question of Megan, if that's okay. And it's more about the traffic input, the traffic impacts, and if this is something that is considered as part of the transition area, especially along Maltby Road and Victoria Road, where there's several rural residences living along that road, who are probably going to see an increase in traffic due to the urban area directly across the road. And I know that there hasn't been like a traffic plan done yet, and we haven't made any formal comments on that. But in my eyes, in a way, that is sort of part of that transitional area. And, you know, will we have an opportunity at some point to see that traffic plan and make comments on that as well?
So through you, Mr. Mayor and the Chair, so the policy direction document does have kind of a certain section on the urban and rural transition area, and it talks about within this transition area that there be policies designed to limit the number of driveways onto Victoria Road and Maltby. So there's that one component that will hopefully be addressed through the secondary plan policies and implemented in their official plan. In terms of the traffic assessment, I think it's likely that we would be circulated on something like that, but I don't know that we have to date. They are working on kind of like a comprehensive master environmental servicing plan that will kind of factor in all these kind of technical items that we probably have a chance to review. But in terms of when, I don't know if I could comment on that.
Would it be fair? Sorry.
Maybe I can jump in here for a second. Prior to COVID-19, I had arranged a meeting with Mayor Guthrie and Scott, I can't remember his name, he's my boss at work. CAO of the city of Guelph asked for an introductory meeting to introduce our CEO and to Cam. And I want to talk to them about their transportation master plan that they're starting to develop, and the fact that they're going to be pushing traffic down through Aberfoyle, and even with the previous density at the Clare Maltby expansion, it's going to add significant traffic. And Councillor Skoulas has been part of our advocacy on well, the whole council's been advocating for trying to turn Aberfoyle back into a bit of a hamlet, and pushing 50,000 more cars from the Clare Maltby expansion through Aberfoyle doesn't really fit with our vision for Aberfoyle going forward. So I agree with your comments, Councillor Goyda, that you know, the boundary road may be of concern, but there's actually quite a bit bigger picture that is a concern. And I was going to ask Megan the same thing: is when would be appropriate? And this may be an appropriate time to just throw the dart first, just to let them know that we have concerns about the traffic that's going to be pushed through our community for this expansion before they twin lane Gordon all the way out. And then we're fighting an uphill battle. So I don't know, Megan, if you would know, well, you already kind of answered it. You're not really 100% sure when the transportation component of the expansion would be discussed, and you hope that we'd be circulated. However, I think it'd be a great idea for myself and to reach back out to the city of Guelph in the near future for that meeting. But with COVID and not really having, I guess we could have a conference call, like on Zoom, just speaking out loud. But Councillor Goyda?
Perhaps one of the comments, perhaps we could add a comment to this, that once the time comes for the transportation component, that we are
circulated
and have the ability to comment on it.
Does anybody have a recommendation for the motion for how it should be worded for bringing back onto their radar the language for the setbacks? Anybody write anything down by any chance?
My suggestion, Mr. Mayor, would be that reiterate our previous council resolution, send that to them and say, we requested this at the previous council, and we have not seen any evidence of it being incorporated. We asked it be reconsidered and incorporated with the appropriate wording.
And can we add a component to bring to their attention our concerns of the traffic?
Certainly, and furthermore that that we request the City of Guelph provide us allow us to comment on their traffic impact study.
I think that's fairly reasonable. Did you catch that, Ms. White Fox?
I'd second that.
Okay, Ms. White Fox, were you able to
Yes,
capture most of that?
I do have it, and then I just have, and that any additional township comments be provided to the county to submit to the City of Guelph on the township's behalf. And I've included that, sorry, my computer's just frozen here, that the previous council meeting resolution be incorporated into the comments, and that we request the City of Guelph to allow the township to comment on their traffic impact study.
Yeah, does that capture well enough that we want, you know, some feedback on the language for the setbacks? Like, are they going to actually go back and read the previous council resolution if we don't have it actually written out? Do you understand? Sorry, Councilor Ballmer, go ahead.
If I could, Mr. Chair, just I think in part of any whereas statement there is that whereas the current report from the city does not reflect the concerns that we previously expressed regarding the buffers, and then, you know, go on from there.
I like that.
Okay, I've captured that.
Okay, so we had a mover of Councilor Ballmer. Who did we have seconder? Did we get a seconder, Ms. White Fox? Councilor Spose. We'll just say Councilor Spose. All right, is there any further discussion on that before we vote? Seeing none. Okay, all in favor? Councilor Spoulis.
In favor.
Councilor Bailey.
In favor.
Councilor Ballmer.
Favor.
Councilor Goida.
In favor.
And I am in favor as well. And if the reporters report that I want to talk to Mayor Guthrie before I get a chance to call him, I'm going to get in trouble again. But I'd like to, I'll maybe try to reach out. And even if we have to do it with Zoom, the CEO and I and their CEO and Mayor Guthrie can maybe get a meeting going. So I'll try to get that in the works to start getting some traction on this transportation master plan. Try to get ahead of it. Okay. All right. And now we have to deal with the, Megan, are you speaking of this County of Wellington planning holding removal, or is that just us?
No, it's me. I do have a report. So if you want me to do like a quick high level
sure, please.
Summary. So a settlement was reached related to an appeal of the county official plan and the township zoning bylaw for expansion to the Mill Creek pit. The settlement was, so the appeal happened back in 2015 and the settlement was reached, I think it was March 2019. As part of this, the settlement minutes, the requirement is for the holding provision to be removed from this portion of the pit expansion, essentially. Subject to certain requirements being met, and that being the construction of the berm on the property, both at the south and east portion of the expansion area, and that that the necessary site preparation and I guess site preparation and pre-extraction works be completed to the township's satisfaction. So Dufferin essentially has confirmed that these requirements have been met. They've submitted letters from an acoustics engineer and their ecologist. It's been reviewed by the township's consultants, and they're satisfied that the requirements of the holding provision have been met, and that it's appropriate to now remove the holding provision to essentially allow extraction. So with that in mind, I've prepared a bylaw to remove the holding provision if township council is also satisfied.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Any questions from council? Councilor Spoulis?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bailey? No? Okay, I'm seeing you shake your head. Councilor Ballmer?
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie. I'm supportive of supporting the bylaw, but I think I'll leave my comments there. It's part of the process we have to go through with it. So, okay. Can I get a mover, or I'll get Ms. Hoyt Fox to read the resolution, please.
That the County of Wellington Planning Report holding removal Dufferin Aggregates Mill Creek Pit Phase 6 be received, and that council approve the zoning bylaw amendment to lift the holding provisions for the Dufferin Aggregates Mill Creek Pit Phase 6.
Can I get a mover for that?
Sure, I'll move it.
Councillor Spoulis, oh my gosh. Seconder, Councillor Bailey. All in favor, Councillor Spoulis,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
Councillor Ballmer,
Favor.
and I'm in favor. So that's carried. All right, thank you, Megan. We'll enjoy what's left of your afternoon. It looks like it's a wonderful day out, so
Thank you again for having me.
take care.
Take care.
All right, next up is the report, Building 2020-005, Building Monthly Update. Any questions for staff on that one? Seeing none. All right, can Ms. White Fox read the resolution, please?
That report Building 2020-005 with respect to the Building Department monthly update for April 2020 be received for information.
Excellent. Can you move her, please? Councillor Bailey, seconder, Councillor Ballmer.
Yep.
Awesome. All in favor? Councillor Spoulis.
Favor?
Okay, Councillor Bailey,
In favor.
Councillor Ballmer,
In favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. All right, mayor's updates. Nothing really to speak of. I would actually ask our director of finance if she's still here, if she's heard anything about our grants that we've applied for that have been kind of in limbo. Any word?
Mayor Seeley, are you discussing the Investing in Canada grant for the parks projects?
Parks projects, and one was the rehabilitation of Parks Field. So it was basically soccer lights, baseball lights, and the soccer field.
Yes, so we have not heard anything back from those grant applications at this time.
Okay.
However, for the Moyers Bridge, we did get federal approval,
Yep.
I believe a couple months ago, so.
Okay. And Director of Public Works, I had a phone call today from Paul Tribe, sidewalks. Do you know when they're going to be started and if they're still a go in front of the school?
Regarding the sidewalks, Sieg Miller is just waiting on one more locate, and they currently have their concrete construction crew on site for Brock Road, so I would estimate within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so that takes care of, where'd my pen go? Any notices of motion from anyone? No? Committee minutes, none. Any municipal announcements? Councillor Goida.
Yeah, I'm just gonna turn my video off here quickly. Forgive me, I just want to speak for a minute. I just want to share with council something that I've been thinking about over the past little while as we navigate through this pandemic. And it's, you know, as someone who owns a small business, works in a small business, buys from a small business, sells to other small businesses, I've experienced firsthand some of the challenges that COVID-19 has presented. And in speaking with some other business owners, I've been hearing that each faces their own unique challenges. Some have had to shut down completely. Some are remaining open with an entirely different business model, and keeping themselves, their staff, and their customers safe is a challenge. Challenges of letting staff go, to finding staff who are willing to put themselves at risk by coming to work, paying rent and mortgages, to implementing infrastructure changes to allow for social distance and sanitizing things, and the list kind of goes on and on and on. And I've been racking my brain to try and think of ways that we could offer support, as many as a lot of those business owners are members or residents of our community. And I know that they could use our help both now and as we slowly start reopening. And I had noticed in the Wellington Advertiser that Center Wellington had launched a website called Shop Local CW, and they did that in partnership with Center Wellington Chamber of Commerce. And it's a website where it gives consumers can go there and purchase gift cards online and then redeem those gift cards at a later time which helps businesses both now and later. And I thought that was a really great initiative, but we don't have a Chamber of Commerce, and I myself don't have the technical know-how to launch a website. And as we all know, the staff already have enough on their plate to be able to implement something like that. So as a starting point, I've been speaking with our CAO about volunteering myself to be a council member appointed as the contact, if council would support that idea, to work with staff and or the county and their economic development group to bring information forward to council and see if there might be some ideas that we can implement and help our businesses out. And I just wanted to sort of bring that forward, and hopefully council would support that idea.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Goyda. I'm supportive of it. It's great you're taking the initiative. So, Councillor Spoulos.
That's a great idea, Councillor Goyda, and I would support you to be the lead contact, and I would support you. Sorry, guys. Okay, yes, I would support you, Councillor Goyda, to take the initiative, and I certainly appreciate you thinking about this as well. So whatever you need, just ask, and we'll support you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Councillor Bailey.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you definitely have my support for this. I think that's a great initiative to start. Something that's been on my list to look into, there's something called Bring Back Main Street through the Canadian Urban Institute. I haven't looked into it, but it's a big initiative that they're also working on to try to help keep, I should turn this off, help keep businesses, you know, within the communities going, and they're trying to just brainstorm different ways to support them all. So I can't speak for what they're doing, but it might be a good place for you to also look into and just see what they've been coming up with.
Yeah, thank you.
And let me know how I can help.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know. I don't think we require a resolution or anything for that. Well, Councillor Bulmer, sorry.
I'm still here.
Yeah, you keep moving around on my screen, so.
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Goyda. Yes, just in businesses out here belong to the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, and they used to have a satellite program providing support and programs for our businesses out here. So I think it'd be worth a call to the Guelph Chamber of Commerce, which used to be run, of course, by Guelph's MP, Lloyd Longfield. And I would certainly give you any support you need. You know, we can chat offline if there's any technical support you need. You know, we can get you set up as a webmaster tomorrow, and you can set up whatever you want.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, excellent. Okay, any further comments for Councillor Goyda? Oh, Councillor Spoulos?
No more further comments for Councillor Goyda, but if you're still carrying on with municipal announcements.
Yep. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yes, our internet committee, we've put together a survey, and you can access it either from the website, clifflynchhighspeed.ca, or from the Facebook page for your information. So it's got a link also to a speed test as well.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a municipal announcement. Unless we already know about it, but the farmers market has been canceled for the year. Is everybody aware of that? So that's sad news, but probably appropriate during the COVID-19. So we will not. Oh, Councillor Bailey.
But they are doing a lot of online initiatives and promoting all the different vendors and kind of saying how you can still access a lot of their products.
You're very garbled. You might have to state most of that again, please.
They're doing a lot of online. I forget what I said. Just promoting where you can still purchase their products.
Yes. So
I could speak to that a little bit too. I had a phone call this morning with the secretary of the farmers market, and she did give me the formal notification of that and had a few questions as it pertains to the agreement with the municipality. And what she's going to be doing is following up and giving me that official notification in writing. And then she had a couple of questions that I could answer for, and then we'll bring that forward to council so that you have that as official notification, and then we can use that to share in the community and have it on the agenda so people are informed of that as well. And there's some subsequent questions that have come out of that, but we'll be addressing that in the report that's going to be hopefully on your next agenda.
So I apologize. I didn't realize there had to be official notice. I'm old school and just thought it could just be. So
that's okay.
Hope I didn't cause any troubles, but.
No.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Any other further municipal announcements? No. Okay. Next page. Any unfinished business from anyone? Seeing none. Bylaws. Ms. Whitebox.
That the following bylaws be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2020-027, 2020 final tax levy and rates being a bylaw to provide for the levy and collection of property taxes for the 2020 taxation year. And B, bylaw 2020-028 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 1985 as amended, being the zoning bylaw of the Township of Plisslanch.
Okay, can I get a mover for that, please?
Sure. I'll move
Councilor
it.
Spillis, seconder. Councilor Goyda, I don't know if you can move that motion because the aggregate's in there.
I'll second it.
So what we'll do is, Ms. Hoyt Fox, can you just read out the resolution and keep the final tax levy one separate from the zoning one for the holding removal, please, and we'll start again.
Okay, so I'll do the tax levies first, so that the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2020-027, the 2020 final tax levy and rates being a bylaw to provide for the levy and collection of property taxes for the 2020 taxation year.
Right, so I got a mover for that one. Councilor Spillis, Councilor Goyda, all in favor. Councilor Spillis,
Favor.
Councilor Bailey,
Favor?
Councilor Bulmer,
Favor.
Councilor Goyda.
In favor.
Okay, and then I'll excuse you from this one, Councilor Goyda. So Ms. Hoyt Fox, if you can read the bylaw for resolution for the next bylaw, please.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2020-028 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 19-85 as amended, being the zoning bylaw of the Township of Plisslanch.
Okay, so mover for that one.
Sure, I'll move it.
Councilor Spillis, seconded by Councilor Bailey. All in favor. Councilor Spillis,
Favor.
Councilor Bailey,
Favor?
Councilor Bulmer,
Favor.
and I'm in favor. Okay. And I believe we're going to enter into closed session now. Thank you to the gallery that attended and watched our ever exciting council meeting. We appreciate anybody that takes time out of their day to watch us fumble through these council meetings.
Okay, that council shall go into closed session under section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of A, confidential verbal report from Tom Helinski regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with respect to the site alteration bylaw number 31-12 as amended, and B, confidential verbal report from Glenn Schwendinger, CAO clerk, regarding personal matters about an unidentifiable individual, including municipal board or local board employees -- recruitment.
Okay. Can I get a mover for that?
I'll
Move it.
move.
Councilor Spillis, seconder. Councilor Bulmer.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor. Councilor Spillis,
Favor.
Councilor Bailey, where'd you go? There you are, Bailey.
Favor?
Councilor Bulmer,
In favor.
Councilor Goyda,
In favor.
and I'm in favor. So I'm just looking for the recording. There it is. Okay, we're going to go back into open session. Ms. Hoyt Fox, would you be able to read the resolution, please?
That council moves into open session.
Okay, I need a mover for that.
I'll move.
Councilor Goyda, seconded by Councilor Bulmer. And can I get all in favor? Councilor Spillis,
In favor.
Councilor Bailey,
Favor?
Councilor Bulmer,
Favor.
Councilor Goyda.
In favor.
I'm in favor. Okay, Ms. White Fox, if you can continue with the resolutions.
The council receives the A, confidential verbal report from Tom Helinski regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose with respect to the site alteration bylaw number 31-12 as amended, and that the township retain Tom Helinski to assist with the updating of the township site alteration bylaw. B, confidential verbal report from Glenn Schwendinger, CAO clerk, regarding personal matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees / recruitment, and that council authorize retaining ML Consulting to undertake organization review and provide recommendations for funding and funding the review at an upcoming meeting, and that council authorize staff to recruit a 1-year contract legislative assistant, and that council direct staff to proceed as directed.
Sounds perfect. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Spoulos. And all in favor, Councillor Spoulos,
In favor?
Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Ballmer,
Favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
I'm in favor as well. That's carried. Okay, we have a conforming bylaw. Ms. White Fox, is that our next one?
Yes. That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2020-029 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of Puss Lynch at its meeting held on the 20th day of May 2020.
Get a mover, please.
Move.
Councillor Goida, seconded Councillor Spoulos. All in favor, Councillor Spoulos,
Favor?
Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Ballmer,
Favor.
Councillor Goida.
Favor.
I'm in favor, that's carried. And then Ms. White Fox, adjournment, you could call the time, please.
That council hereby adjourns at 5:32 p.m.
Okay, mover for that.
Sure.
Councillor Bailey, seconded by Councillor Goida. All in favor, Councillor Spoulos,
Favor?
Councillor Bailey,
Favor?
Councillor Ballmer,
Favor.
Councillor Goida.
In favor.
All right, I'm in favor. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, staff.
Bye.